You are looking at your phone right now. A message arrives in half a second. A video loads instantly. A call connects without a thought. You never wonder how, but somewhere between your phone and the person on the other end, your signal passed through a steel structure standing quietly on a hillside, a rooftop, or a field that you have driven past 100 times without once asking who owns it, and more importantly, who gets paid for it. Because that steel structure is not just infrastructure, it is a business, a surprisingly powerful one. And today, we follow every dollar flowing through it. America runs on wireless. Every call, every stream, every transaction, every navigation direction, every piece of data that moves through the air between a device and the internet passes through a physical antenna mounted on a physical structure somewhere on American soil. There are roughly 350,000 cell tower sites operating across the United States right now. Most people have never looked at one twice, and that is exactly what makes the business so interesting. The most valuable assets are not always the ones people notice. Real estate you can see and touch gets attention. Tech companies with flashy products get attention. But the steel towers standing quietly at the edge of highways, holding up the antennas that carry 4 billion pieces of data every second, those get almost none. And yet, behind those towers is one of the most consistent, contract-driven, infrastructure-backed revenue models in American business. The question is, where exactly does the money flow? Start with the wireless carrier. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, these companies need to build networks that cover hundreds of millions of people. To do that, they need antennas in specific locations, specific heights, specific geographic positions to fill coverage gaps and handle data load. Building and owning every tower themselves would require enormous capital and operational complexity that most carriers decided, starting in the 1990s, was not their core business, so they outsourced it. Tower companies emerged. Their job was simple: build the tower, own the tower, maintain the tower, and lease space on it back to the carriers. Today, American Tower operates over 41,000 towers in the United States alone. Crown Castle operates approximately 40,000. American Tower generated $10.6 billion in revenue in 2025 from a business that is essentially leasing steel structures to wireless companies under long-term contracts. Think about that for a moment. $10.6 billion from leasing space on towers. The model works because of one simple economic principle: shared infrastructure.
Here is where the economics become genuinely fascinating. A tower costs money to build once, but it can generate revenue from multiple tenants simultaneously. Crown Castle's towers averaged approximately 2.5 tenants per site as of their most recent annual report. Company's market cap. Each additional tenant added to an existing tower requires almost no incremental cost to the tower owner, but generates full additional revenue. The tower is already standing. The land is already leased. The maintenance is already being paid. A second carrier adds their antenna, and the tower owner collects a second rent check. A third carrier does the same. Third rent check. This is what makes tower economics so powerful. The first tenant covers the costs. Every additional tenant is almost entirely incremental profit. If you want to subscribe to more financial content that breaks down businesses this clearly, the subscribe button is right there. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Now, back to the numbers. In 2026, cell tower lease rates range from $500 a month for a rural single-tenant ground lease to $6,500 and above for a multi-carrier urban rooftop site, based on a database of over 300,000 U.S. cell sites. Peabody Telecom. Most new lease proposals in 2026 land between $500 and $1,250 per month for new ground leases with tower companies. Intellectia.ai. But here is the important distinction. That is what the landowner receives, the person who simply owns the land underneath the tower. The tower company sits above the landowner in the chain. They collect the carrier lease payments, which are significantly higher, pay the landowner their ground rent, and keep the margin between the two. Tower Genius, which reviews thousands of cell site leases annually, has seen tower companies paying landowners as much as $13,000 to $18,000 per month on high-value multi-carrier sites.
EMF radar, and the carrier lease rates that tower companies receive from AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile are separate from and substantially higher than what they pass to the landowner. The tower company captures the spread, and it does so under long-term
contracts, typically structured as 5-year initial terms with 4 or 5 automatic renewal periods, creating lease relationships that can span 25 to 30 years. These leases typically include built-in annual rent escalators, meaning revenue grows automatically each year regardless of market conditions. Predictable, long-term, escalating. Multi-tenant. That combination creates a revenue stream that asset investors find genuinely compelling.
The revenue picture is attractive. The cost picture is where reality arrives. Building a new cell tower in the United States requires navigating a process that is far more complex than simply putting up a steel structure. Land or ground lease costs come first, either purchasing land outright or negotiating a long-term ground lease with the landowner. Then structural engineering. Tower construction itself, depending on height and type, can run between $100,000 and $500,000 for the tower alone in many markets. Site preparation, electrical infrastructure, access roads, and fencing add more. Then permitting. Zoning approval for a new tower can take months, sometimes years, and is never guaranteed. Local governments, community opposition, FAA height restrictions, and environmental reviews all create timeline risk that capital cannot simply buy away. Then, ongoing costs. Maintenance, insurance, property taxes, ground lease payments, and periodic structural upgrades as carrier equipment changes. The tower business is not a passive income machine. It is an infrastructure management business that requires ongoing professional oversight, capital allocation, and regulatory navigation. The companies that do it at scale, American Tower, Crown Castle, SBA Communications, have built entire corporate infrastructures around managing these complex
efficiently. For an individual, the barriers are real and significant. Both American Tower and Crown Castle generate 90% or more of their revenue from T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. That concentration is the single largest risk in this business. If a major carrier consolidates, reduces network spending, or terminates lease agreements, the impact on tower revenue is immediate and significant. We have already seen this dynamic play out. American Tower announced the termination of its strategic co-location agreement with Dish Wireless in 2026, following Dish's default on payments. Technology risk is real as well. The shift toward 5G small cells, lower-powered antennas mounted on streetlights and buildings rather than traditional tall towers, creates long-term questions about which tower formats will remain most valuable as networks evolve. The industry has also weathered significant input cost volatility, with paving and construction input costs surging significantly in recent years, compressing margins on new tower development, even as existing tower revenues remained relatively stable, and lease expiration risk is always present. A tower with strong revenue today is only as valuable as its remaining lease duration and the probability of renewal. Recurring revenue is not the same as guaranteed revenue. The best tower assets combine strong locations, multiple tenants, long remaining lease terms, and diversified carrier relationships. Sites without those characteristics carry substantially more risk than the headline income numbers suggest.
This is the question most people watching this video actually want answered. The honest answer has several layers. If you own land that a tower company or wireless carrier wants, you may already be in a position to negotiate a ground lease. You become the landowner in the chain. The income is real. The terms matter enormously. Lease negotiation specialists report average immediate rent increases of over 300% when landowners negotiate properly versus accepting initial offers. Peabody Telecom. If you want to develop a new tower from scratch, the capital requirements, permitting complexity, and operational demands are substantial. This is a professional infrastructure development business, not a side project. If you want to invest in the economics of cell tower ownership without directly owning a tower, publicly traded tower companies offer that access. American Tower, which generated $10.6 billion in revenue and $2.5 billion in net income in 2025, is publicly traded and accessible to any ordinary investor. Crown Castle operates approximately 40,000 towers in the U.S., generating nearly $4.3 billion in annual revenue. PitchBook. And if you want to subscribe before you forget, this channel breaks down industries like this one every single week.
Hit subscribe and you will not miss the next one. Owning the tower company directly, building it from scratch, is a different conversation entirely. It requires teams, capital, regulatory expertise, and years of patient execution. But understanding the economics, that is accessible to anyone. And understanding where money flows in industries most people ignore is one of the most consistently useful financial skills there is.
Zoom out one more time. The cell tower is not really the story. The story is what the cell tower represents. It is a piece of infrastructure so essential, so deeply embedded in how modern life functions, that the companies controlling it generate billions in revenue under long-term contracts, regardless of what the broader economy is doing. People do not stop needing wireless coverage when markets go down. They do not stop streaming, calling, messaging, and navigating when recessions arrive. If anything, they depend on connectivity more. The businesses sitting inside that kind of essential dependency, not the glamorous consumer brands, not the products people consciously choose, but the infrastructure they cannot function without, these are the businesses that generate the most durable revenue over the longest periods. American Tower alone operates over 148,000 communication sites across more than 20 countries, built over 3 decades, quietly, without most people ever thinking about who owned the tower their signal passed through. That is the real lesson of this industry. The most powerful positions in any economy are rarely the most visible ones. They are the positions sitting underneath everything else, carrying the weight of the modern world without anyone looking up to notice. Every time your phone connects, somewhere in the background, a business just got paid. Most people will never think about that business, and that is exactly why the people who do tend to see things everyone else misses. I am Mr. Max Wealth. Look at the infrastructure. Follow the money underneath the surface. See you in the next one.